say a presentation on horn to band folks without playing a little band piece. So I figured that was the lick of the day for you guys. So greetings and hello. My name is Josh Johnson. I'm the horn teacher at Iowa State University. In addition to my work at ISU, I'm a member of the Des Moines and Quad City Symphonies. I play fourth in Des Moines, then third in Quad City, and then I perform frequently with the Omaha Symphony as well. I play a lot of Broadway shows in Omaha and Des Moines, so if you've ever been to the Civic Center, chances are you might have heard me. I grew up in Denver, Iowa. Many of you know that as the Mile Wide City. Okay, probably none of you know that as the Mile Wide City. The cool thing about that is I've had a relationship with the University of Northern Iowa, University of Iowa, Iowa State, and Nebraska. So it's safe to say that there's at least a quarter of me that you'll like. So go Big Red, go Hawkeyes, go Cyclones, and go Panthers. So I'm a fan of them all. So currently I'm the biggest fan of Iowa State because they give me my paycheck. So it's great. My band directors and lesson teachers in middle and high school were Tom Tritle towards the very end as I got into college. George Curtis, who was my high school band director. Denny Vance and Esther McGuire, who were some of the people who started me on horn. Especially Esther. She's a very passionate horn player and music educator. And man, did she get me off on the right track. So I definitely count my blessings because, man, you guys know, some of you people that have been around a while know these educators, and they're character-filled, they're caring, they're compassionate, and they're some of the most understanding educators that have helped shape the educator that I am. So I'm also lucky that they were seasoned educators who still had a deep passion for horn. They gave me so many free lessons. It's made all the difference, and I just like to take a moment to say thank you. So. At ISU, I usually teach the horn portion of brass methods in the fall. I've had a unique experience this year because I've actually been able to teach the students up at UNI their methods class as well while Dr. Sue has been abroad. So it's been a really great experience to share with them and just share, my journey. I started at UNI, and to share with them has been really cool. So. This video is sort of meant to be a 30-minute refresher course in what you received during your undergrad. So, buckle up and we'll jump on in. Let's talk a little bit about breathing. You can't talk about a brass instrument without breathing, right? It's our lifeblood. So, let's talk a little bit more of why that is. I don't want to go too much in depth, but what I want to do is just focus on how simple breathing is, right? You've been doing it since birth. So, there's tons of good materials out there, like the Breathing Gym. They're spread rampantly through our marching band culture. So I'm not going to try and reinvent the wheel here. I'll show you just a few exercises that I really like. And just wanted to remind you that, as I just mentioned, we've been doing this since the dawn of our time. So let's just stick with that. So everybody, this is an interactive video, even though this is the word asynchronous came around in 2020. Even though this is an asynchronous video, you're still going to do a breathing exercise with me. So everybody take a breath and release. Go ahead and take another breath. Okay, release. Awesome. Now, let's lift our arms up above our head and we'll just see if we notice a difference. So everybody arms up. Take a breath for me. And release. And another breath. Let's try to sink in as much air as we can. Let's take another one. And another one. Until you're about ready to burst and let it go. Okay, sound like the guy from the Caddyshack, right? Okay, take another one with our arms up. And let it go. Okay, good. So what happens when we pick our arms up above our head is we're opening up our rib cage. So it allows lots of room there to let our lungs expand a little bit more naturally than they typically do. So this is a great exercise for young kids, so keep that in mind. What are some keys to a relaxed breath? That's something that I struggled with until I heard some master classes by Gail Williams or Arnold Jacobs later on. But let's just talk about a couple of ideas to get a relaxed breath. I like hearing a hollow sound to my breath. If I can get to that O sort of hollow sound, where we can sort of get that resonant chamber going, right? That's a really, really good sign. If we feel cold air rushing over the back of my tongue, or your tongue, I guess, right? So take that breath for me, see if we can get that cold air feeling sensation on the back of our tongue. I like to get to that feeling where I have my arms above my head and my rib cage is just nice and free, right? So if I'm getting sort of this effect, and I could just let all the air in, then that's going to make me very happy when I go to play the horn. The other analogy I like for young students is the Darth Vader. Everybody try that with me. Try it one more time. Okay, cool, awesome. Before we jump into this topic, so this is going to be free buzzing. We're going to talk a little bit about that because it can be very helpful. It can be very helpful, and just to get students on the right track sometimes, this is a great step for us. So let's talk just a bit about free buzzing. As mentioned, I don't do a huge amount of it, but what I do, it's all about quality. Lost my place here. Let's see. Go ahead and everybody, we're just going to keep this very simple. So take a breath for me. And I like to do the motorboat. Just like that. Just pretend like you're a motorboat on the water. Take you back to the age of 4, right? Now, let's do the same thing without puffing our cheeks. So, try that one more time. And we should be able to get kind of a free buzz there. Okay. So all we're doing is just locking these muscles in place just a little bit. Your student doesn't have to know that, but if you do, that's great. So push the right buttons here. Okay. So let's take this one step further. Everybody whistle for me. Okay. So when I free buzz, I really don't like to free buzz in the high register. It's usually in the low to middle register because I don't want to exert too much extra tension on my embouchure. Everybody whistle for me. You can whistle in or out, so whichever works for you. A lot of people that do this exercise, they figure out that they can actually whistle after it. If they couldn't whistle before, they'd get enough control of their aperture where they can actually figure out how to whistle, so it's kind of cool. What I want you to do as we do this whistling approach, I want you to roll your bottom lip just slightly into your top lip. So we blow that air straight out. What happens? We roll the lip in just under our bottom lip, and it's going to shoot that air straight down, so it creates a free buzz, right? So you should be able to get something like an E or a G at the bottom of the staff, and that's horn pitch, of course. So that's a nice way to get an easy free buzz out of a student. We'll come back to buzzing just a little bit. I want to talk first about holding the horn, because I'm sure if you have a youngster and this is their first lesson, this is something that they're going to want to do. Is just touch the instrument, right? So let's do that. Everybody grab a horn and a mouthpiece. So our left hand is pretty intuitive, right? So our pinky goes here, and we go 3, 2, 1. And I definitely encourage double horns, right? And I don't see any reason you can't start a student on a double horn. Maybe if their stature is very small, it might be a good idea to start them on a single B flat or an F horn. We can talk about that some other day. But I prefer a double. So our left hand is pretty intuitive, right? Our right hand gets a little bit more complex. Everybody asks, why did we put the hand in the bell? And here's a quick answer for you. It's because of the natural horn. For 100 years, we use this technique. Oh, boy, I got to warm up more. But for 100 years, we used that natural horn technique, right? So we're moving our hand in and out of the bell to make a fully chromatic instrument. A kind of fully chromatic instrument. So with young students, if you have a very small statured student and you get this gut feeling that they're going to, drop the horn on the floor, what I might suggest is a hand position like this. And this is sort of a last resort, but just have them cradle the horn like this, right? So this is a really good way to not get them to, up your brass repair budget for the year. So just get them to hold the horn like that. Otherwise, if it's say a 7th grade student on up, 6th grade student on up, I'm a big fan of the Princess Wave or the Handshake or the Slap Me 5. Trademarked by John. No, just kidding. So I like to keep it relatively straight, right? So a nice straight hand position. And I put the thumb on top just like that. Then I just put it in the bell. So my fingernails are touching this outside bell wall. As you can see, let me grab another bell here and I'll show you. This is known as the pretty bell. So, but it's really nice for demonstrating when you have a screw bell like this. So what you can do is just put your hand in there, just like that. And as you see, it's pretty straight. It's about half closed, half open, right? And the advantage to this type of hand position is when you have to play stopped horn, all you got to do is just move your hand over like that. And we'll talk about stopped horn in just a bit here. So we keep it nice and straight, and it just goes in there, and our fingernails touch the outside bell wall. We can actually rotate our hand like this. I would probably leave this surface alone. We don't want to be holding it here. So the outside bell wall. So we're thinking of where our valve slides are here. So, okay. A big question that I get a lot is, well, should I do on the leg or off the leg? And when I hold a horn, I have this freakishly long torso. It's like 4 feet, but I have like 2.5 feet legs. So, well, okay, so 2 feet legs, 4 feet torso, so about 6 feet tall. Okay, my math didn't quite work there. That's why I play the horn. For me, horn is sort of this balancing act where I hold it between my two palms, right? Or my thumb, the fulcrum of my thumb, and then my grip here. As a soloist, it's customary to stand these days as a horn player, so we just want to bring the horn to us. So off the leg is very popular these days. There's, of course, advantages to both hand positions. I don't really want to debate them here, but I want you to watch out for just a couple of things. It's the lead pipe angle. So I've seen a lot of like 6th grade students that come in like this, and they're just crushing this top lip, so they have no resonating surface to work with, right? They're just pinching off all this blood flow here. So as a horn player, I definitely like to anchor on my bottom lip. So just keep that in mind, when you set them up with the horn. On the leg is totally fine. You're going to find some of the smaller stature students, it's going to have to be like, they're going to end up putting their thigh like on this part of the horn, or they'll actually put it on a chair or something like that. The lead pipe angle is far more important than where they put the bell. So keep that in mind. Some might even struggle. You might even, if you have a horn with a larger tuning slide, you even have them hold the horn here. So we get this access going, and they can put it on their body or however they can hold it, right? So with younger students, sometimes we have to struggle that way, and it's okay. So I just wanted to clarify that today. It is an unwieldy instrument to hold. What I would suggest, just model for them. Go ahead and, grab a horn, sit in a chair, and, model the best way that you can, and you know how, and have the student walk around you and take a look and just see what they observe, right? Maybe even ask them some leading questions like, hey, did you notice what I did with my right hand? Or, isn't that funny that the mouthpiece touches my lips in like this certain position or something like that? You could totally, get them engaged by just modeling for them. It could be a fun activity. So that might be a very creative way to, have your first encounter with horn happen. Okay, let's talk a little bit about embouchure. So I'm going to talk about the embouchure. This can be sort of a dirty word with beginning brass players and teachers, right? It can be a tricky thing to talk about sometimes. Horn is extra tricky because we have to encompass a huge range. So we play in the tuba register, we play in the stratosphere with the trumpets. So traditionally, we use the bottom lip as our anchor and the top lip as our fleshy vibrating surface. So how I like to think of it is high vibrations, fast vibrations, slow vibrations, right? So in the low register, I'm going to pivot a little bit more to my top lip. In the high register, I'm going to pivot towards my bottom lip to alleviate some pressure here. So that's sort of how it works for me. So my mouthpiece position, and this is pretty true throughout the workforce, about 90% of successful horn players, professional horn players, use an embouchure setting between, it's going to be anywhere between 60% upper lip, 40% bottom lip, to 80% upper lip and 20% bottom lip. So when I'm talking about that, what I'm saying is 80-20, 60-40. 80-20, 60-40, right? There's really no right answer. I mean, I definitely have parameters that I like to push students for, but it's kind of like trying on shoes, you know. Um, Everybody's shoe size is just a little bit different. You know, how they fit, it's going to be a little bit different. Depending on the equipment that you're using, it's going to be a little bit different. So there's a little bit of flexibility. You might want to prompt them by saying, hey, it's kind of like trying on shoes. So here, try this one, try this one, try this one, and just have them see what feels the most comfortable and go from there. You're going to be surprised that their first instinct is usually the best one, right? So, and especially if you model for them, they're going to be all over it. They're going to want to do what you do. They're going to want to make that sound. So if you have any questions about embouchure, I know it can be quite tricky sometimes, or if you have a student that seems like they're an anomaly, feel free to reach out or send the student my way. I'm more than happy to work with anybody and get them on the right track. So let's talk a little bit about buzzing. A few minutes every day goes a long way. This reinforces good breath support and a relaxed approach to an awkward instrument. So think back to 5th grade when you were trying to wield your instrument for the first time. Like, it was just a weird experience, right? And it took some getting used to. Here's a couple of ideas for you. If, you know, a student really struggles holding the horn, I might spend quite a bit of time of their first few lessons doing some buzzing, right? Just to get them engaged that way, because it's going to be sort of cumbersome for them to pick up the horn. As I mentioned, a few minutes every day goes a long way. Don't huff the notes in the place. So one thing that most brass players do is this. What happens when we do that? We interrupt the flow of air, right? So when I buzz, especially when I slur or I have a legato buzz, it's only going to be portamento. So I'm almost always going to use this portamento buzz. I'm going to slur more than I'm going to articulate as well. So it's my buzzing is probably 80% slurring, 20% articulating. So a couple of exercises that I like. There's this is out of the Doug Hill warm-ups for horn players. So that's very similar to the stamp exercises for trumpet. Those actually work quite well on horn. As you notice, that portamento buzz, right? Pick recognizable tunes. So the beautiful thing about buzzing is it really takes no context. You don't have to push the right buttons, right? So as long as they have a singable approach, they can buzz it on the mouthpiece. Breaking my own rules and articulating with buzzing, right? Okay, let's talk a little bit about warming up on the horn. And this is something, you know, if you've ever encountered me or my teaching, we're big into fundamentals. So let's talk about some of the components of a good warm-up. Long tones. These are the equivalent of running or jogging around the gym to get the blood flowing. So, and that analogy actually is pretty powerful for young kids. They'll say, oh yeah, that's why we do that in gym, right? And sometimes they'll even know, so they'll surprise you. There's an exercise that I'm going to send you. It's number 1 in my warm-up routine. It's called the 6 notes. And it's seemingly easy, but gets us to focus on a number of things simultaneously. We focus on what's happening at the beginning, the middle, and the end of the note. Are we playing with a healthy mezzo forte sound? Is the sound centered and beautiful? Are we playing in time? Are we thinking in time, right? Do I know my fingerings for a C chromatic scale? So I want to play that exercise for you now just so you can sort of get a little bit of a feel for it. Just in the sake of time, I'll stop there. So what you hear is that I'm breath attacking that first note. I'm tongue attacking the second two notes. I'm really focused on each one. It's almost like we're sort of like throwing like paper airplane darts at a dartboard or something. It's like the first one, we sort of get our bearings. We find out exactly where we are. The second one, we want to just follow along with that the first one and just land in a really tight grouping. Okay? Let's talk a little bit about the harmonic series and flexibility exercises. So the horn is this awesome instrument where it's built on this harmonic series, and this goes for any brass instrument, right? But we can encompass a huge range very easily. So because of that, we can actually come up with lots of cool exercises to help us through this. We can even go to the B flat horn. Add some articulation in there. That was a little exercise from Radovan Blakovic, and we're going to talk about him in a bit here. So the cool thing about flexibility exercises, there's no parameter with which we have to start, right? So it can be one note, it can be all 16 notes, right? I like to play games with my students. So for instance, I'll do a lot of I play, you play. So, and then we'll just gradually extend it to different octaves. One thing that I've been just totally surprised by is when I play games with my students, especially young students, they are so receptive, and a lot of times they'll play a high C or something and they won't even know that they're doing it. So it's quite impressive to play this game. Right? Okay. All right. So one thing I'd like to say is we play the horn for the sound, right? So we have to focus on that sound. Here's one exercise that I really love and really enjoy. So that's another one from Radovan Blakovic, right? And it shows us this wonderful vocalese sort of sound that we can have. I do have a 4 and a 7-year-old, so I'm not even going to edit this because it's just a sign of our times with Zoom. So that's what you hear in the background there. Well, let's keep moving on here. In my experience, it's the simple things that make your horn students better. And the sound and musical thought come first. So these are great exercises to get them in touch with that sound, right? We can even use the words like meditation or path or journey, right? Because that's just going to link them to this idea of listening and discovery, right? So I like to do that in my teaching a lot. Let's talk a little bit about articulation and oral cavity shape. Some things to keep in mind with your students. Although horn is a high brass instrument, I found many of the successful syllables we use to talk about articulation are more related to low brass instruments. So our tuba and trombone playing brethren have thought about this way more extensively than us high brass people, and I think horn players are just now catching on. Sorry, trumpet players, if I offend you, but the low brass people, they've been talking about this for a long time. Syllables that are da or a th, so da or da syllables, seem to work better to allow students to get a more open sound. So say da like an angry German man or woman. Go ahead. So, da, right? Okay, that was pretty gruff. Go ahead and try it. Try it on your own. So, da, right? Fun, right? Notice a couple of things. Your tongue sets on the upper teeth below the hard palate. So, it's sort of a no-no for me. If you're up on the hard palate, then we might have to, go back to the drawing board and say, what's going on? Go ahead and say the for me. So, the. Okay. It's a little bit lower in between the teeth, right? To me, regarding articulation, somewhere in there is the sweet spot to get the most clear resonant sound. So say da and then da. And it can move around per register as well. So in the low register, it's more of a da. In the high register, it's more of a da. The tip of the tongue can move around just a little bit, right? So in between that da position and the da position. I have a question for you, and this is sort of a philosophical question. Does our tongue go backward or forward when we articulate? How many said forward? Okay, yeah, you're right. It's backwards. Yeah, excellent. And what I mean by this is, yes, it has to go forward to set, right? But it's always going backwards. It's receding when we say these syllables. Everybody say da for me, or da. Can everybody feel that their tongue? The tongue is sort of this interesting little caricature where it's like the snake that like moves back, right? So everybody say da, and you should feel it move back just like that. Good. So we're always pulling the tongue back and getting it in that resting position. The beauty of this is that we remove an extraneous thought from our brain and our articulation becomes way more responsive. Now, this is another caveat, but it's important for the teacher to have a very firm grasp of articulation. I think we have to know what's going on, but it's not so much important for your 5th or 6th grader to have as firm a grasp of it. You're like, this guy's crazy, you say. Okay, maybe a little, but here's why I'm saying this. So this is the big concept for me. I'm going to talk a little bit about how our autonomic system can really help our students. So let's do just a quick exercise. Everybody say your name. Josh. You don't have to do it as dorky and resonant as I did. Okay, thank you. Now I want you to say your name without making a sound, so don't activate your vocal cords. I look ridiculous, right? Okay, cool. Now, say your name without activating your vocal cords and without moving your tongue. I'm stuck, right? You're stuck too. Mind blown. So what's going on here? Well, first off, our body's autonomic system kicks in and sends a signal to our vocal cords, our tongue, and our lips. So brain goes to here, here, and here, and that's how we create speech. So when we have a student practice the syllable da or tha, they're connecting their articulation to speech, which for a good majority of students will be something that is autonomic and second nature to them. They won't even think about it. They'll just do it. Practice some of the exercises on your own and just see if you can come up with an approachable way to relay this to your students, right? Also check out some of Arnold Jacobs' videos which talk about sensory nerves, motor nerves, and the autonomic system. I'll attach that to this. This is a handout, so you'll get some YouTube links to the Arnold Jacobs videos. There's a really enormous amount of his teaching on YouTube, and it's so fascinating. Every time I watch an Arnold Jacobs video, my mind is just blown. So when we're talking about a guy who really had the ideas of teaching down, he was it. So so see if you can incorporate that and make them yours. In the beginning, we are all sort of natural players. So cater your approach to focus on the things your students already do naturally well. So when we talk about breathing, take a breath in, right? Let it go. When we talk about articulation, give them something recognizable that they can relate to. When they talk about hand position, do what works. Sometimes you don't have an easy answer, and there is no textbook, so you have to get a little creative, and that's okay. What I found is it's a mastery of the simple things that let us do the extraordinary things. So this is especially true with horn. Horn is not, an incredibly technically apt instrument. It can be, with a lot of hard work and, a little bit of genius sprinkled in there. It definitely can be. A lot of what we do, though, it's a simple function, and it's just as simple as any other instrument. We just have to take a step back and be a little bit more intuitive about it sometimes. So, but once we get that down, it's okay. So it's all good. All right. Let's talk a little bit about the extremes of the instrument. So the high range, this is a pretty hot topic, for high school students, higher, faster, louder. I remember I think in my weight room in high school, it was bigger, faster, stronger, the BFS program. And my band director would always joke with me. He's like, "Yep, there's the higher, faster, louder guy." And if you knew me in high school, I did have I played with an MC dynamic, which has changed. Um, so everything is relative to the student's abilities. But know that they have everything they need to make their high register work from day one. As I mentioned a little while ago, I've had many, 6th and 7th grade students be able to play high Cs without even thinking about it. So one thing I'd like to clear up is that sometimes band directors will throw out the fallacy to think that they have to have strong muscles to make the science experiment of brass playing work, and that's not necessarily true. We're fine muscle athletes, but if we know how to use our air correctly, we're able to use those fine muscles to the best of our advantage. So. Another tip in the high register for horn, it seems life stops at high C for some reason. We're like any other brass instrument, and it's absolutely possible to play above high C. And I actually demonstrated that. I have a license plate that says low horn, so that's primarily how I get paid. I'm able to play high Fs above the staff. It's not impossible. Just watch that we're not, putting that cap on your horn players. A slow, steady approach to gradually increasing the high range is necessary. Progressive long tones and flexibility exercises are critical to development in the high register. The truth is that your students are going to have to play a lot of failed Bs before they get Cs, or a lot of failed B flats to get Bs. That's a quote from Tom Tritle, one of my teachers and awesome mentors. Let me show you one quick exercise, which I'll include. This is a fun one. This comes from Bill Vermeulen, the king of Path down in Texas. So you can hear how I'm hitting every partial as I move through the range of the horn. So this is what I'm doing through the mouthpiece. Right? And so I'm giving it the feedback that the horn wants, right? If we try to huff everything into place, it's just not going to work for us. So it actually gets quite easy to get way up here. You get the idea, right? So we want to focus on that smooth portamento buzz throughout the range of the horn. The low range. Let's talk a little bit about the low range. So I'm happy to work with any players that want to get specific about range. So send them my way. I'll be more than happy to give them a little master class in just what we do and how we do it and how they can better approach the higher low range. For the low range, the biggest concern is the break range of the horn. So break range is basically when we have those certain moments that don't want to respond. It's kind of like when we shift gears in a car, right? So we get first gear, second gear, third gear, fourth gear, fifth gear. As I'm going to quote Bill Vermeulen here, but as he says, paraphrasing here, right now we're sort of working with variable transmissions in cars, and it's sort of the same thing with our embouchure. So we want to be able to do something like this. Right, so it's just we have this unimpeded buzz stream all the way through the register of the horn. So just keep that in mind, that the low range is quite tricky, and we don't have to necessarily do anything crazy with embouchure. Sometimes there's mouthpiece issues we have to touch on, or a lot of times we have to work with tooth position or oral cavity shape. I am more than happy to work with any student that wants to come my way to talk about low horn, so feel free to send them on over. Personally, I like to address my break range in my warm-up routine. I've already played this exercise for you, but this is a really fantastic one. So first thing every day, I address my break range and I say, okay, let's get this out of the way. get the idea. And I'll just keep going down and down into my break range as long as I can. Then I have a few other exercises I like to do down there as well. Okay, here's some tips for high school directors and orchestra conductors. Let's talk a little bit about stopped horn. There's been quite a bit of debate, and actually in the Horn Society's magazine, The Horn Call, I remember in the early 90s there was this debate about how stopped horn functions. So we're not going to have that debate today, but I want to give you just a quick couple of tips and a refresher on this. So horn players, say we're going to play an F in the staff. What we're going to actually think of is an E on the F horn, so on the open horns with no trigger, to make that note work. So the general rule on the F horn is we're going to think down 1/2 step. Now, if we use the B flat horn, this gets a little bit more tricky. I found that generally if we think up a tritone on the B flat horn, that's going to work pretty well for us. So I don't know if we necessarily want to go there, because that gets pretty complicated pretty quick with our fingering options. So stick to the F horn if it's in the middle or low register for sure. We need to maintain a tight seal with our hand position as it meets the bell. And I'm going to show you this position really quickly. This is something we talked about a little bit earlier. So basically, if we have a hand position like this, what's going to happen is you see that all of the space, all the little air gaps are closed up, right? So when I go to stop the horn sound, it's going to get this nice resonating sound. So one thing I also like to do, I like to physically squeeze between my palms. This is something that Tom Tritle showed me once upon a time. I'm going to do it just how I just did. So we get a nice, pretty centered sound. But when I actually squeeze between here and my grip and the bell, there's something about the tension that we impart on the instrument, and maybe it's just helping seal up that right hand position that makes our stop notes really, really snarly sounding, which I really like. So let's talk just a bit about transposition. So horns, on occasion, will need to transpose, and if you conduct an orchestra, that's probably one of your biggest concerns is like, okay, these are transposed parts, can they do this? Right? It's something that is related to our history with the natural horn, and it's something that's vital if you have students interested in orchestral playing. So here's just a few things to help guide your students. Just remember that everything is relative to the F horn. So horn and E will equate everything down 1/2 step. E flat, and remember this is related to F, will go down 1 whole step. G will go up 1 whole step. Basso means below. Alto means above. So high B flat will be a 4th higher, or a B flat alto will be a 4th higher than F. One thing you could do to sort of service them, especially if you have a good horn player headed off to college, have your high school students read a saxophone part, just an E flat saxophone part, or find a march with E flat horn parts and have them transpose. You'd be very surprised. Even a brief introduction, just give them some of those rules, create just some of those parameters. It's going to help them overcome a lot of challenges at some point in their playing careers. So getting them to do it is a very important step. I have tons of equipment recommendations. I've had to work hard to narrow this list down, but I want to give you some of my suggestions here. You should know that I've owned something around 70 horns, so if you need any guidance about equipment, I've literally played it all and bought it all and sold it all. So I don't have a problem, man. Yeah, I've actually stopped counting. I think I added up to 70, and I was like, okay, that's a lot of horns. So I've had to pull back a little bit. So I'm partial to Gaia wraps, especially for young students, and the reason being they tend to be on the lighter side. The bell throats are smaller, and they're typically more adjustable in the left-hand position. So a lot of them these days will even have adjustable pinky hooks, and there's just quite a bit more adjustability. As far as specific brands and models, get out your pen and paper, and I'll put this in the notes as well. A Yamaha 567, 667, 671, or a 668-2. The 668 is actually a crispy wrap, but they're actually very fine playing horns. A Kahn 10D or 11D. A Hoyer G10 or an 800 series. Then there's also their Crosby ramp, which is 6801. I also really enjoy Breeze horns, or Briz horns, I believe it's pronounced. There's a model number Briz 2000. These are sold by Jan Ballou and Ken Pope, who are two very reputable sales persons in Boston and I think Chicago these days. So the Briz was a long-term collaboration with them with a Chinese company, but they are extremely high-quality horns. A lot of my college students buy them because they're so economical and very fine playing. The last brand recommendation that I have for you is a Paxman Series 4 and a Series 5. Let's talk about mouthpieces a little bit. Sometimes I'll get an email from a band director and they'll say, "Hey, what should I use?" And I usually throw them down the middle of the road pack. So you probably have these sitting in your band room: a Holton MC or NDC, MDC, M as in mother, excuse me, and the Schilke line is also solid. Same with Yamaha. Yamaha makes some nice mouthpieces as well. Mouthpieces are like shoes, and it's the one piece of equipment that actually touches our face. So my personal mouthpiece is sort of like my feet, 14.6E, whereas my wife's she's a size 8, and they're narrow. I think 8 narrow is her shoe size. Students with different anatomical features have different needs. So that being said, the human body is quite adaptable and should be left up to a sort of a reputable teacher what their needs are. I can usually sort of pinpoint with a student within a couple of lessons of what their needs might be, or we'll talk about that in the very beginning. The cool thing about mouthpieces is they're cheap and there's lots of options out there. So my door is always open if you guys need recommendations. I want to give you some parameters. So the inside diameter of the mouthpiece should be between 17 and 18 millimeters. The bore size is should be between a 12 and a 16 bore, a medium to medium deep cup, something like an American shank for most horns in the USA. Europe sometimes has a different system, so you want to maybe ask, what kind of shank they have. Sometimes Yamahas actually have a larger shank size, the same with the Paxmans, so it'd be something to ask about. As far as repertoire goes, a lot of the old school, no pun intended, materials that you have in your band room are actually going to be quite nice for horn, especially beginning horn. So the Getchell series of books, Getchell book 1 and 2, I think they use that for the IBA etudes, or here in the South Central region we use it for Skiba. They're still relevant, as are the Rubank methods. Rubank's a little bit outdated, but I still find it to be a very solid method. It sort of keeps us on that track of horn. So, James Negus, he's a composer. I believe he teaches at UGA, maybe. I could be wrong about that. He offers some very practical studies. He's got his book 20 Modalities, which I really enjoy. I make most of my young students purchase that. Karen Houghton down at Houghton Horns has a fantastic book out for beginners. It's called Recipe for Success. So it's sort of all the rave at TMEA and I think even Midwest a couple of years ago where it rolled out. She sold out very quickly. She gave a really stellar masterclass. So I personally haven't read it, but I know the Houghton family, and they're really fantastic. So I know that they would put out a quality product. So I'd encourage you to look there as well. The Farkas book, Art of Horn Playing, it's dated, but still it's a really relevant resource for band directors. So I would encourage you to look up the Farkas book. It's like $10 on Amazon or something, so just get it shipped to your door and check it out. The Patag Hovey method is also a viable resource. So I basically gave you everything in a very short amount of time. Like I said, this is a crash course in all things horn. My door is always open, and I would love to talk with you or your students about anything related to brass playing. Come visit me at Allstate. I'm on campus during that week. During Cycle and Honor Band, come over and see us then. Pat Sheridan's going to be our guest clinician this year, so get over there and check it out in 2022. He should be fantastic. And I'd love to talk with you and see if you ever have students interested. In Iowa State, I always give a free lesson, and they are welcome to spend the day with somebody in the ISU horn crew. So we'll make sure that they feel very welcome. If you're ever at a Des Moines, Quad City, or Omaha Symphony concert, come say hi, and might even be able to get you some free tickets. So, very best wishes with your young students. If you have any questions about this masterclass or anything that I offer, or if I can be helpful to you anyway regarding horn, my door is always open. And I hope our paths cross soon and we get to see each other in person. So, thanks so much, and have a great day.